When we're writing code, there's a lot of times where we want to join two strings together. We call that concatenating strings, and Java gives us a way to do that. So here I have a fairly empty Java program. We'll deal with these variables later. But our first example is, suppose we want to print two strings. So we do that with systemout.println, and let's put two strings. One string, we'll have the word string plus concatenation. Now when I run this, you'll see that it prints the two strings combined together. Notice there's no space because we didn't add one. So suppose I want to add a space. I need to add the space at the end of each string. And then I concatenate each word. And this will give me a space between each word because I've added a space at the end of each string. So when I run this, you can see the spaces. Now, not every string has a space in it, so there's no reason I couldn't, for example, just add a string containing one space to my concatenation, and then that will give me the space that I want. And you can see that space here. Now, when you use a variable in a statement, such as I'm going to do here, this variable will be converted to a string since I'm concatenating it with a string. So when I run, you can see that it concatenates the value in the variable num as a string to the string that I had preceding it. And I can do this for any variable. And notice I'm adding a space at the end of my string literal here. A string literal is just a string contained in quotes, so that there's a space before it prints the variable. And whether or not we want a space just depends on us. I could say something like this, where I've added a space here, but I didn't add a space here because I don't want that a space between the value of this variable and this string. And while I did put this in string, this would also work if I gave it an actual integer literal as well. And notice this is a string variable, this is an integer literal, but everything was concatenated together as a string in my output. Now suppose we had a really long string. So this string is so long that it doesn't even fit on one screen. Now one thing I could do is buy a wider monitor, but another thing I can do is break the string up and concatenate it so that this becomes one string across two lines. So now when I print this out, even though I printed this on multiple lines, it's concatenated together and the output shows up on one line. So again, you can use the concatenation operator, which is the plus sign, to combine two strings. The one thing to keep in mind is if you need spaces, you may need to concatenate a couple spaces there in between the words where you want those spaces to be if the space is not already a part of the string. So a quick word of warning before we end the video. You want to be careful what you're doing with your plus sign. Now, as an example of that, notice that we have this number 42. So suppose we say something like the number num plus 17 is equal to, and then we say num plus 17. So you may expect this to print 59. So when we run this, the number 42 plus 17 is equal to 4,217. Now that should surprise you because that's certainly not the case. And if you look carefully, you may notice what's happening. It's not adding 42 and 17 together, it's concatenating them, 42, 17. So the way to fix this is to put that in parentheses. That tells Java, hey, I have two numbers in parentheses, work that out before you convert it to a string to concatenate with the rest of the statement. So when I run this, now you can see when I use parentheses, I got the actual result of the arithmetic that I was trying. So be careful when you're adding numbers together in a print statement. If there are two numbers that you want added together in your result, put them in parentheses so that addition is done. Otherwise, Java will just concatenate those numbers.